panelists for being here, and thank you candidates for being here as well. This is a panel interview, which is different than a debate. So we'd appreciate it if you treat it as a panel interview. And we'd appreciate it if nobody says anything detrimental about any other candidates. I don't know how many candidates are in your race, but even those that aren't here. In fact, if something is said detrimental, that will count against you. In addition, I can give time to the person that was disparaged for a reply, but we would prefer not to deal with those issues, and so please let's keep it simple and treat this as a panel interview. The format will be as follows. There will be a 1.5-minute introduction that each of you will get. Afterwards, the panel will go through their questions. We'll get as many questions done as the time allowed. And they would have 30 seconds to ask their question, and then there is 1 minute to answer, and there are no follow-up questions by the panelists. And so I will be keeping time. I'd appreciate if you respect the time. I always let you finish your sentence, but beyond that, please don't go beyond that. So, if we could start with Mr. Kephart.
All right, thank you. Can you hear me? Well, I want to thank you for letting me be here today. I really appreciate the opportunity. I am seeking your endorsement because I think it's important for groups like this that are out in our community. I'm from Las Vegas, well, actually from Henderson. I grew up in Henderson. I graduated from basic high school, went to UNLV. We didn't have law school, obviously, back when I graduated from law school. Went to law school back in Cleveland. Came back to Las Vegas. Was given an opportunity to go to work for the city of Las Vegas as attorney right away. And then I was recruited to the district attorney's office. I was there a number of years and became a team chief shortly after I was there. Headed the sexual assault unit for 5 years. After I realized I was losing my objectivity with seeing case after case after case where young children were being killed and brutalized, I asked to be removed from there. And I ended up as the team chief for the habitual unit, and I ended my career at the DA's office and came to the bench. I actually was in private practice for a short period of time and was asked to go back to the DA's office. That's when I headed the sexual assault unit. I care about the community. That's why I came back to the community. I care about what we're getting from the bench. That's why I decided to be a judge. I felt that it was hard to be hypocritical if you're outside the bench and you can't really change anything and do anything to adjust the problems that we see as litigants. And so that's why I ran for the position. I took a huge pay cut to do so. Wife wasn't real happy, but I did it. So okay, thank you.
And Mr. Marcek.
Good afternoon. My parents came west from New York. My father.
If you could hold the microphone up a little
Father
bit.
fought in World War II. He got his education on the GI Bill. We moved here in 1958. I was born in San Francisco, but I was adopted. I came there in 1961. Grew up here, went to high school here, went to UNLV. Like Bill, I went out of state for my law degree. Since I've been a lawyer back in Las Vegas, I've had my civil practice for almost 20 years. In that practice, I represented mostly individuals in all types of civil cases. I'm currently the president of the Nevada Justice Association, formerly Nevada Trial Lawyers. I've been a Rotarian for 16, 17 years. I've held all types of leadership positions in my Rotary Club. I'm running for Department 19. It is an open seat, principally because it is a civil department. It's an all-civil department, and all my experience has been in the civil law area. I'm serving because I want to do public service. I work for a lot of nonprofits and other organizations, and I want to further that venture by serving the public in the capacity of a judge.
Thank you very much. We will start our panel discussion with Dr. Dept.
Judge Kephart, you talked about sexual assault victims, and you probably don't like to revisit that. That's kind of...
Ma'am, I can't hear you.
Okay, you probably don't like to revisit that, but I'd like to know what could be done to make things better.
Well, the big issue right now is with regards to victims feeling safe to be able to testify against their assailants. And when you have very young victims, it's even more compounded because they're afraid of the court in the first place, and then they come in here and they're sitting sometimes as close as we are here from their assailant that's done very dirty things to them, and to watch them. You know, you see from the bench, I see it all the time. They're trying to persuade them. You see their facial expressions and trying to intimidate them. You know, the issue, it comes up against a constitutional issue, though, with the right to confront individuals, and our Supreme Courts have addressed that. But I think to assist with victims better, make them feel more comfortable, I bring them in early.
Minute goes pretty quick.
Yeah, it does.
Yes. Did you have a question for Mr. Marcek as well?
If you want to answer the same question.
It's not really your domain if you were in civil court, but you can answer it also.
I don't, you know, I haven't dealt with the sexual assault crimes. You know, maybe 5 to 10% of my practice has been in the civil area. I don't have any specific recommendations. I know the tension is, in those cases is, you know, the accused has a right to confront witnesses called against them. That applies to minors. Well, it's difficult, right, to have minors testify, and, you know, they're not usually the most reliable, and the trauma of the incident can taint their testimony. So you have this tension that's really driven by the Constitution. I just think it has to be worked out as best it can be.
Ms. Gardner?
Good afternoon, gentlemen. My question is for both candidates. What do you think? I realize it's not set in stone because the chief judge can change assignments, but at this point, assuming that this department is going to stay a civil department, what do each of you feel you will bring to that department?
Could we start with Mr. Marcek this time?
Okay. Well, essentially all my experience, Ms. Gardner, has been in the civil law area. You know, I graduated law school in '89. I worked for 4 years in California doing principally civil defense work. I came back to Las Vegas. I worked for a small firm for 3 years. I owned my own practice. So my entire background has been with in the civil law. Has been in the civil law area. I've represented hundreds, if not thousands, of clients in this area. I've had many jury trials, many bench trials. I'm ready to break out and dance here.
Ms. Gardner, the reality is that the Department 19 is not completely civil court. It isn't. You heard Judge Malani talk about there was certain courts that they asked and was given by legislation to stay civil, and those are 7 different courts. This one's civil now because Judge Earl wanted to practice civil and just do civil law. What I can tell you, though, what I bring to this is that I've actually presided over civil trials. I've had civil jury trials. In Justice Court, we do civil jury trials. I've handled, when I was handling the civil court, I handled it for a full year. They gave it to me. And I did roughly about 50 civil trials. So I've actually presided over them. So I understand the procedure of dealing with it. And I understand the levels of proof. You know, when you're dealing with criminal matters beyond a reasonable doubt, and by preponderance in the civil matter, sometimes there's a blur there. And unless you practice and deal with both of those areas, you may have problems with it.
Thank you. We're actually going to stop with the questioning until they turn us off, which they will. However, we've decided that the next question will be a dance-off. And so, if you would like to go first on the dance-off, or if you both relinquish the title of Best Jazz Dancer at the Veterans of Politics.
I don't think you want to see that.
Oh, yes, we do. We've got a camera here. Become a YouTube star. No, they're going to turn this off, and so just be ready. Can either of you do jazz hands? Is that?
I can do salt, a little bit of salt.
Oh, look at that. They both do jazz hands. Look at that. Jazz music. I haven't heard of tuba in jazz.
It actually was a good lead-in as we were talking. I put on behind it with my voice.
have a tuba playing the bass line.
New Orleans style.
The trombone.
We offer the
Hey Steve, they already performed their dance off, and so you're supposed to compete against them. Their floor is yours. I have to say, Mr. Kephart gave the best jazzy. Said no?
Okay, well, we're just gonna have to talk louder than the music. Sorry.
They're not going to turn it off?
The owner, Scott Roman.
Yes. He's going to turn it off? No? Okay, yes. Thank you. Okay. Now, who is the next question?
Ms. Bosley.
Ms. Bosley, I believe you're the next question.
Good afternoon, Senator. For Marcek?
Yes.
Marcek? Okay. You said that most of your background's going to be civil. So then, to what extent do you think it's important that a judge have a wide variety of legal experiences?
Well, it's extremely important, except in this department, I mean, civil does encompass a wide variety of legal cases. And there's breach of contract claims, real estate claims, labor claims, personal injury claims, product liability claims, and a whole lot of discovery and expertise goes into each of those claims. So with this team, is now and will be a civil department, you know, I do have the background in those areas because those are the types of cases I have handled over the last 20 years.
Thank you.
Mr. Kephart. Oh, is it the same?
No, different question.
Different question.
I read, I think in the Las Vegas Sun about a Saturday court session that you were in favor of. Okay. So then describe some other change that you would like to see in the court as far as like the way the court operates.
I can't hear you.
As far as the way the court operates and opinions, respects to the opinions.
Well, you know, one of my biggest criticisms of a litigant is that the courts don't work. I know that's easy to say, but you know, they give us a number of hours. So now some judges work extremely hard. Please don't think I'm saying that judges don't, but some of them don't. They just hurry up their calendars and they get in and out. And they're done by noon and they're on their way and doing whatever they can do and away from the courtroom. So I think there's a big concern with that. I think that one of the biggest issues that I have with is that we need to put good staff around us, and we're up against money issues with that and financial issues all the time to give good staff to help us. So some of the judges are concerned about and maybe don't work as long as they need to because they don't have confidence in their staff. And I mean, I'm not trying to skirt the question with that, but there's a number of issues that can be changed, and it's always with the efficiency. Everybody's asking about that. It's caught on the table.
Do you pass, Ms. Steele?
Yes, I passed.
Ms. Babcock?
So you said that, you decided to nominate Judge because you wanted, there were some things that you felt were important to change. What are those things that you were specifically looking to change, and what have you done to change them as judge now?
Okay. Well, what I was involved with in the position I'm in now is I was trying to start what they call a night court. there's a big influx of a lot of individuals that are moving in and out of our jail. We have a huge jail population issue, and the jail just can't handle the number of issues that are happening nightly, specifically on the weekends, with out-of-state individuals because of the transient nature that we have here. So I'm involved with that. I worked with, because of my relationship that I had with the district attorney's office, I was able to actually get some administrative orders changed and get them more online with the way that they do their screening for purposes of jail population issues and bail issues. So I was able to basically open up more dialogue with that because of my relationship with them. And because of my relationship with the Metropolitan Police Department, I understood more issues that the county is dealing with regards to the downtown areas, the strip areas, for addressing population.
Time service. Okay. Mr. Marcek? Is it a different question from Mr. Marcek?
You could just change it a bit so much as if you were to become a judge. If you were to run this.
So changes in the court system to, was that essentially the question? I'm sorry.
Yes, that's
Okay.
right.
Well, it's a little bit of alternative dispute resolution has to come into play, especially in the civil area. You know, you heard the bottleneck of cases, and from Judge Villani, you know, it takes 36 months, that's 3 years to get a case to trial. That's too long. And so one solution would be to really push alternative dispute resolution, which is mediation, arbitration. Another solution would be to have more judges. We have one of the, if not the highest rate of cases per judge in the country. And that statistic alone drives a lot of the delay. So even though we have a lot of judges, we have a lot of cases, and if you really want to address the bottlenecks, there's going to probably have to be some more judges eventually.
Thank you. Ms. Knight?
This is for Mr. Kephart. So going into knowing that this is primarily a civil court, why did you pick this department as opposed to all the other departments?
I need to dispel with this right now. I've heard it over and over and over. It is not a primarily civil department. It's civil now because the judge that's in there wanted to keep it civil. The calendars will change. Every time a new judge gets elected, they change. And I've already talked to the chief judges that are involved with this, and that's one of my issues too, is the disconnect that people have with the courts. I was a little concerned about the disconnect specifically in this one with the courts, because they don't know that it is a split court. I've handled civil matters before. I've presided over civil trials and civil jury trials. And so, you know, when you talk to where I'm just proficient in one area, just proficient in the other, I think it's disingenuous to the sense that the court needs people that are well-rounded on both sides. And you know, in particular, if you want to be in a civil court, then run in a civil court, but it's not. So I chose this because it's an open seat. I knew months and months ago about Judge Earl's retirement, and that's why I've done this.
Thank you. Mr. Viola?
Thank you. Everyone keeps asking me questions, so to follow up with, I guess with Mr. Marcek, why did you choose this department in particular?
Well, because we're going to have a fundamental dispute, but you can check the record. This is a civil department and will be a civil department. Facts are stubborn things, okay? I did it because it was principally a civil department. Now, I don't want you to leave you with the fact that I've done all civil. I have done a little criminal. I give it at most 5 to 10%, but it's not like I have not ever done a criminal case. I have handled many criminal cases over the years, but the lion's share of my work has been civil. So that's why I picked this department, because it is a civil department. It's a good fit for me. Thank you.
Did you have a different question for Mr.? Okay. All right, Ms. Green.
Okay, I do have a question for each. So, Mr. Marcek, you mentioned that there's just so much work and more staff would be helpful. This can't be a new issue. And so I'm just wondering, if you had a crystal ball, what would you predict would be the challenges of your successors, and what do you think we could do now to mitigate the current challenges that you're facing in the courtroom?
With the court itself, you're talking?
And with the court itself, I mean, I know you're more familiar with your personal caseload, but how can we mitigate, maybe not looking into funding more staff, but maybe mitigating the amount of crime that's coming into your courtroom?
Well, that's a broad social problem, right? You know, and you know, in order to mitigate crime, you got to go right to education, and those are many things that to improve our education system, to minimize people that feel a sense of loss, that are hopeless. That's one of the ways, but we should have, for those that do get in the system, there should be more opportunities for rehabilitation. And we do have a veterans court, which I think is a model for that idea, that concept, because with the veterans court that we have, it's not fully functional now, but you know, it does give veterans in particular, for nonviolent crimes, an opportunity to go through a treatment program and come out without a record. You know, if we can, if that's good for veterans, it's probably good in other areas for other people that commit crimes.
Time, sir.
Mr. Kephart, I see that you're heavily involved in the Boy Scouts of America, and you also you were able to obtain a grant against Bible crimes. And I'm just wondering, what kind of advice are you giving these young people that you're giving lectures to help them avoid falling victim to these crimes? And then in terms of Boy Scouts in America, what would you say would you say that there's a strong connection to them being successful members of the society, and would you encourage any boy, or do you think there's just a certain type of child that should be in that organization?
The Boy Scouts of America, any child. You know, they do have Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts. We're talking about it that way, but even crossing over, it's no big deal to me. But you know, I think that those programs promote good moral upbringing. I believe that unfortunately, I think our parents have kind of lost in some regards. Some parents aren't parents at all, and those individuals that we're seeing, they're becoming the offenders. Something I want to tell you that we do have a veterans court. I just like to plug this in here, and I run it, and it is successful. I handle the matter completely in the eyes of rehabilitation, and so we bring young men and women in to see what happens in our veterans court, to understand individuals that have been fighting for us and protecting our rights as young men and women, to see whether or not they want to head down that same road. So some of my discussions that. Thank you very much. Ms. Carroll.
Thank you. I have two different questions. Mr. Marcek, as a sitting judge, how would you handle an attorney that misses legal deadlines and appears to not have control of the case at hand?
Well, it happens, you know. It's sort of a question of degree. I mean, we have the powers to sanction attorneys who are needlessly clogging up the court system. And deadlines do get missed. It sort of depends on what the deadline is, how significant it is. I wish I could give you a better answer, but it's sort of a case-by-case basis to deal with it. But if there was someone that was a serial problem, you know, coming in, you know, ultimately the case it's a terrible result for their client, because the case gets dismissed or the default gets entered against the defendant if it's the defense attorney. Eventually, there's sort of a progressive level of sanction that can occur. So, I mean, I would start out light, giving the litigants and the attorneys all benefit.
Thank you. Judge Kephart, what would you do if a case involving a juvenile, especially if it was an internet crime, presented to you did not demonstrate fully to you, since you've been involved in it in the past, presenting due diligence or improper case management?
If the juvenile did?
No, someone who was
somebody was presenting it?
Yes.
Well, you know, that's the unfortunate portion of everything here is that whether or not how the attorneys act. And, you know, as a judge, it's kind of tough because you sit back and you have to preside over this to see that, make sure that justice is done in a criminal matter, that justice is done in a civil matter. And oftentimes, as a judge, you want the attorneys, the ones to perform. You want them to do their jobs. And I've had a number of times where I call them to the bench and discuss it, you know, like Judge Williams talking about objections and that. I'll call them to the bench and say, is this something that you are considering objecting, or you want this in? Or, because we have to consider what happens after our court. There's appealable issues and you know, ineffective assistance arguments, that type of thing, that only compounds and continues the case. So, you know, I think that you need to, as a judge, there has to be somewhat of a mentor type of ship with an attorney, and get their respect and earn their respect. And I think you can make cases move a little bit better if they see what you want to do with it, and they're not afraid that they're going to get sanctioned all the time. So.
And this is the last question, even with the tuba jazz going through. The majority of your answers have been concise enough that we've gotten through the entire panel, so great job. Mr. Brooks.
Gentlemen, thank you for joining us here today on the panel. I'll start with you, Mr. Marcek. You had mentioned about the Veterans Court, and unfortunately you're sitting next to the judge that presides over the Veterans Court, because you made a comment that the Veterans Court isn't off the ground enough. I've got two questions for you. Number one, have you ever been to the Veterans Court that Judge Kephart oversees at all? Have you sat through it at all? Or no? Okay. And then have you been to the Veterans Court that Judge Stevens and Henderson oversees at all?
I have not.
Okay. Thank you. And then Judge Kephart, I'd like to ask you, since you got cut off talking about Veterans Court, what is it that you really enjoy about overseeing the Veterans Court?
Well, there's a big difference when it comes to the Veterans Court. When the individual comes to my court, they come there with the understanding that we're going to work on treating them. There's a number of issues that we're dealing with, you know, PTSD and mental health issues, traumatic brain injuries, alcohol, drug abuse, and dependencies. That the VA is just now starting to accept some responsibility that they may be caused by military, you know, involvement. And
And over medication.
Right. Yeah. And for us to get involved, actually there's a big movement across the United States now that they're seeing that the courts are getting more involved with this, because we're going to recognize more problems in the future. And you know, it's a good opportunity for us as, I guess you want to say, civil servants, to be able, this is the one area that we can actually see change and see some benefit that's getting out there. And it's a good model that we can use possibly towards rehabilitation of individuals that aren't military.
Time, sir.
Okay. Thanks. Okay.
I thank you both. You made up the time. That was great. Everybody got their questions, and thank you very much for being so efficient.